Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton with Peyton Energetics, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So in today's POV, the Pleiadians wanted to flesh out what they were talking about in their last video. So the Ps were talking in the last video about how we can move to quicker timelines because they know we are impatient as humans and are excited for the next phase of our journey. So in the last video, they were touching on this topic and they wanted to go a little deeper in today's video. So before we jump into talking about how to speed up your timeline, don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. Now, as we know, because we have been on our spiritual path for quite a while now, we're not all on the same timeline. This is something that is super confusing for our human minds because we're kind of conditioned with the ego mind to look at the world and think we're all in the same boat, that there's one version of reality. But as the Ps have been telling us for years now, that's not really the case. In fact, there are infinite timelines coexisting simultaneously on this planet. And in particular, right now, it's very apparent to us that there are two major, let's call them groups of timelines, because there's not just two, but we have two major trajectories. We have those timelines that we sometimes refer to as ascending timelines, those people who have chosen to ascend in this lifetime. And we have what we sometimes refer to as descending timelines, those souls and those humans who have chosen to continue in the illusion, who have chosen not to ascend in this lifetime. And we can see very clearly now as we look around at our world that there are two totally different realities existing at the same time. So it's getting very, very obvious that this has happened. This is not something that we are having to just trust the Ps on anymore. This is crystal clear now. So one thing that is starting to come up for a lot of light workers and star seeds, as we realize that even within the category of ascending timelines, there are infinite timelines there. So we have those timelines that are moving slowly and those timelines that are like an express train. And so a lot of us kind of want to be on the express train, right? We're so excited for the next chapter. So in the last video, one of the things that the Ps mentioned we could do to speed up our progress is to start removing ourselves from the 3D narrative. So what they mean by that is by starting to step away from all of those mainstream storylines, all the news stories, all the things that are supposedly happening in the world. Because the more we are tuning into what other people are doing, the more we are following the news stories that the Matrix is dangling in front of us, which it does pretty much 24/7, the more tempted we are to get into emotional involvement with it, to have an emotional reaction, right? We see all those mainstream stories and we get angry, or we get frustrated, or we get into fear. And as we do that, we are slamming on the emergency brake and matching the fear timeline. So essentially, we slow down our progress every time we do this. Because every time we have a negative emotional reaction to something, whether it is fear or judgment or anger, we're keeping ourselves in resistance. We are trying to separate ourselves from that thing. And that's just a lower vibration. So every time we do that, it's like putting on the brakes. So the Ps have been encouraging us over the past year or so to start stepping away from the mainstream narrative, unless you like it. Because whatever you are giving your energy and attention to, you are voting for. Whether you are having a positive reaction to it or a negative reaction to it, you are asking for more. So the more we are reacting to something, the more we are involving ourselves with it. We are feeding it. So the Ps have been encouraging us to start to step away from that, unless it's what you like. One of my teachers used to say, don't buy into the illusion unless you like it. And it's kind of a genius way to summarize it. So the more we step away from any of these storylines that just aren't necessary for us to give our attention to, the more you speed up your progress. Because what happens as we start to pull our attention out of these storylines, we start to step out of the mainstream collective narrative. We start to pull out of the mainstream collective contract. And as you can see, looking at the world around us, the general world is not on a speedy ascension train. So, the more we start to remove our energy from some of these denser collective contracts, the faster we move, the more our frequency rises, the faster our consciousness expands. So, how can you start to disentangle yourself from some of these denser narratives? And it's really important to put a caveat in here. When the P's are talking about this, they are never ever telling us to suppress or to deny or to avoid. So if we are looking at a story and having an emotional reaction to it, it means there's something there that needs healing. So as we do our healing work, then we start to pull our attention away from it. So just always like to clarify that we're never saying to suppress something. Now, the second thing that the P's wanted to add to this discussion is something else that we can do to really continue to remove ourselves from the collective narrative. Because the more we start to pull out of the collective narrative, the more we move into creative freedom. Because the collective story is based on the past, right? We think things are possible based on whether they've been done before. But we are ascending beings. We are in uncharted territory. There are no limits. And so the more we are tied into the old human storylines, the slower we're going to move. So as we start to pull out of these mainstream narratives, the mainstream stories, the more we expand, the faster we move. So one great way that you can do that is by starting to opt out of the planetary templates. And I've been talking about this in several of the past videos. It is a big topic for the P's right now. So we're going to continue to be exploring that as we move forward. But starting to remove your energy from these massive planetary energies. Because if you missed the past discussion, planetary templates are essentially kind of what you can think of as the energetic rules of being human. Those things that we think that are just the laws of the human experience, that we're just bound by them. But the beautiful thing is, as ascending beings, we are bound by nothing. We are absolutely unlimited. But to access our unlimited creative power, to step into manifestation of that, we've got to pull our energy out of the old way. And one of the ways that we do this is by starting to break down the planetary templates. And these are some of the core beliefs that we hold as humans. One example is we think that as humans, we have to age and get sick and die. Guess what? Not an energetic truth. That's just an old human story. Another one is what we were talking about in the last video, the financial enslavement planetary template, that you have to work to survive on this planet. Guess what? Not energetic truth, just an old collective agreement. So these planetary templates are massive energies. They require some special tools, learning a few new tricks to start to remove your energy from these planetary templates. But as you do, you start to move into entirely new realities, realities that are free from some of these basic human restrictions. Because all of our old contracts as humans are based on limitation. That was the name of the human game. That was why people came to the Earth School, to experience separation. But we have graduated. We have learned that lesson and we're kind of over it. So now our next big step is to start pulling our energy out of the old paradigm. And one of the huge ways we do that is by starting to break down planetary template energies. And this is kind of our next frontier as lightworkers and starseeds. A lot of us are doing this without realizing it at an unconscious level, but to really do this work in earnest takes some new skills. We have to approach these energies in a particular way because they're just too big for our typical spiritual tools. So the P's are going to start talking more and more about this as we move forward, because this is how we start to radically change our reality, is when we start to break down the very definition of what it means to be human, which has been defined by humanity's history, but no longer. You get to define your reality. And one of the big purposes of this incarnation, aside from the ascension process, is for us to learn how to remove ourselves from all collective agreements. Because as we do that, we move into total creative freedom, where you can create an entire reality to your specification. But we got to get out of the old cages before we can do that. And that's what we're working on now. So our goal now is to start moving into full creative freedom in this lifetime. We used to have to die and go through the incarnation process to completely restructure our reality, but we get to do that in this lifetime. And humans have never had this opportunity before. It's like getting a chance to reincarnate without dying. That is how powerfully we are now rewriting the rules of our reality. So this is something that is going to be a topic of conversation of the P's as we move forward, because y'all, the game has changed. We are living in fascinating times, and the P's are going to be talking to us more and more about how we do all this. So let me know in the comments below, what questions do you have for the Pleiadians? Drop those in the comment box. And while you're down there, don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.